Amazing to welcome Southern Utah head coach Todd Simon to the podcast. Coach Simon led Southern Utah to their first ever Big Sky championship during the 2020-21 season, as they were named Big Sky Conference regular season champions after finishing conference play with a record of 12-2. The team finished the regular season with an 86% winning percentage, which was the best in the program's Division I history. Coach Simon, welcome to the podcast.
Oh, thanks for having me.
Yeah, it's great. A lot of fun things we can talk about. Let's start with basically that the 2021 season, you guys averaged 84.2 points per game, third in scoring offense behind Gonzaga and Colgate. How did we do that, Coach?
You know, we played with really good tempo. That's kind of where it starts. You got to get the possessions up. And so we're trying to get the ball out of the net and trying to score in the first 10 seconds is a big deal for us. And our guys really run the wings and we keep the floor space. So that's been a big thing. But also we're an attacking team. We get to that free throw line a lot. And we want to live at that. We want to be downhill attacking team. And when it's easy to score more points when you're scoring when the clock stopped.
Yeah, a lot of fun for your team. And it obviously led to incredible success for the program, a lot of first evers. And was this a build up to this point where you could put this in full force in terms of this tempo and the scoring offense? Because obviously you built this program from the bottom. Yeah,
you know, when we initially got here, you know, I think over the course of 3 seasons we'd averaged around 4 Division I wins a season, and so we knew we had to kind of start from the bottom. And one of the things that we wanted to do was we've always played fast. Yeah, UNLV played fast, at Finley Prep we played fast, and so we knew we were going to get there, but we had to kind of catch the talent up to match the system. And the first couple of years, we were really good defensively, but we really couldn't shoot. We really couldn't finish. We weren't overly skilled, and that evolved. It really made us a better team because we figured out ways to use guys that maybe aren't considered shooters on the scouting report, and we've kind of developed a little bit of a system to keep some guys on the floor and put them in positions to succeed. And then this last year, we were finally able to increase our skill, increase our shooting, and then we saw the offensive numbers skyrocket from there.
Yeah, great stuff. And you mentioned getting the free throw line. I'm wondering, because we've probably never dove deep into that on the podcast. Is it teaching? Is it drills? Is it emphasis, video? What helps your team get to the free throw line the most?
All of the above, and we have some great athletes. But one of a couple of our major tenets, we're trying to get in transition. And transition help side is very difficult to be on time. So there's opportunity there to attack that paint. In the half court, everything that we do is about rim pressure. And that's, if you simplify it, that's what we're trying to do, whether it be off the bounce or back cuts or post ups. We're trying to really pressure that rim and make defenses collapse. And then we'll get you in rotations and or create driving lanes. And so for us, we really work on our two-foot finishes in the half court. We really work on a million solutions to what the defense might provide. And in doing so, I think it's really helped us get to the line because guys kind of know when they get down there what they're going to do. And that skill is really important in a building block to our offense.
And you've also mentioned practice stats being a big part of it. Do the practice stats help with this emphasis too, in terms of paint and getting the rim?
Absolutely. So we break down and stat all of our 5-on-5 in practice, and we're talking about non-paint 2s, non-paint 3s, paint touch 2s, paint touch 3s, rotate 3s, transition offense, ball screen offense, screen action, restricted 2s, block 2s. Putbacks, edge drive, 45 cuts, extras, and hockeys. We're going through all those things, and guys are just getting used to seeing it because of what it is we're breaking down where our offense really comes from. Where our edge drives, are largely turned into flip to post ups. That's a tenet of our offense. If you can't get head and shoulders to that rim before help comes, we want to flip the post, collapse, get our cutting series going. And so the little things like that and just doing it every single day has really helped us. And then we'll watch it on film and we'll watch and say, hey, look at this finish. This finish is off 1. You landed 20 feet under the basket. Here's off a 2 pivot game, and you're going to give yourself these 3 options by doing so. And that's all. We just try to do a lot of teaching.
So flip the post, that's turning a drive into a post up. That's what you mean.
Yeah, driving that
traditionally
baseline.
Call it Barkley.
Yep. Hard edge drive. We flip the post, and immediately part of our motion, we know the highest number on the floor is 45 cutting or rim cutting. We're getting split action on the strong side, weak side shooters lifting, and they just know as soon as they feel that post up, that's what we're doing. And we've had success with that. And sometimes we'll cut 2 guys. If you're a non-shooter type guy on the weak side, we'll send second cutter a lot of times, and all of a sudden there's lots of space, and we've been able to score with that. It's been really good for us. So there's a lot of cutting in our situation.
So it's an automatic cut. So once they flip the post, they turn the drive into the post up. The 45 is an automatic cut, and then a non-shooter can cut as well.
Yep, we give that guy a count, give him a bounce to see the middle, and then it's an automatic cut, lift behind on the weak side. And and if we have 2 non-shooters on the floor, maybe that other non-shooter just knows, hey, your role is to be a second cutter. And so,
and you've talked about putting a lot of pressure on the rim, so that's one way you do it, right?
Yeah, exactly. And it builds in natural offensive rebounding. All of a sudden now you get that middle post up and this guy's cutting. It's hard to block that guy out on the move. And so we've been able to find offense, and that's ways for us to keep, we always want to have about 3 shooters on the floor and what the defense considers shooters. And so there's ways for us to keep a couple of guys that maybe the defense is, sagging off of, but also keep those guys honest.
And that's a reality of, again, where you're coaching a little bit. You can't always get the 5 perfect players, but you can make it work in different ways. And that's one way you've done it with cutting, which is applicable to high school coaches in particular, who don't necessarily have 5 skilled players all the time.
There's no question. And there's a randomness to it. We just have these triggers, we call it, and say, okay, here's where our cutting occurs. If in our middle ball screens, for example, the side with 2 guys, we're always going to 45 cut, or we're going to flare it, or we're going to set a pin down. But we're always going to have an action on the pairs side, and lift on the single side, or stay, depending on which is strong or weak side. But that's a given in our offense. So it's a randomness to it. We're going to middle drives. We don't want to get deep paint unless we have an opportunity to finish. We want to pound the high paint, and that's such a hard place to help too. So we want to collapse defenses, get on 2 feet in the middle of the floor, right, that dotted line, the free throw area. And then we got cutters, we got fill behinds, we got, and just automatic, if you're on that wing and he picks it up, at that high paint and pivots, that's a rim cut. And maybe that, a back door from the corner, and one guy coming over the top for a pitch back. And we just work on these things. So it's random, it's playing. It's not something that coaches can sit there and take away on a scouting report. It's just going to be guys being able to play in space and have reads, and it turns into pretty good looking basketball.
It does. And I watched some of your clips to get ready for this, and it all starts from spacing, obviously, and then you can see your players cut and play off of that. The one kind of feedback I'd love to hear from you is, what are you telling your players in terms of emptying cuts or to hold cuts? Because sometimes it seemed like some players held the spot, sometimes they seem to empty. So what's the trigger there? Yeah,
some of it's per personnel. We have some guys that are designated shooters. And if you're a designated shooter, we don't want you to be a 45 guy. We don't want you cutting to that rim. We want you filling behind the cut. And so some guys, which adds a little bit of an element of randomness to it. And sometimes guys know, they'll wait and be a second cutter. And so they're kind of reading it a little bit. And sometimes it ends up with a log jam. Sometimes you'll have, wings cutting from both sides or whatever, and you'll have this whole collapse, which worst case scenario, you end up, with the middle of the floor open. And so there is just a randomness to it, but the designated shooters are always holding, and that helps, keep that floor spaced.
Going back to the practice stats, I'm also curious then how you're sharing the information, the learning from that How are you sharing that with your players? And then what stands out as most important to be able to share with them?
Well, every day we start practice, we have a whiteboard, and we chart our defensive breakdowns, and you got to get to an 80% every day. And if you're not at 80%, we start with something for you, to get, okay, I'm 5 reps from being an 80%, then that it's just kind of a little bit of it becomes a competitive thing. And then we do the same thing with rebounding. We don't do any rebounding drills, and every year we're top 30, top 50 in rebounding in the nation. We do no rebounding drills because it's just part of our culture, and we're statting it. We make sure it's being reinforced in everything that we do. And the third thing that we do is our shot analysis. And that's where we're grading shots on a 1 through 5 basis and saying, hey, you guys average a 3.5. Okay, you're going to be all right. Or for example, our last practice, we're charting, we had 11 first side or no ball reversal possessions, for 0 points. We talk about paint touches all the time. We want to touch that high paint. We had 12 paint touch possessions for 20 points. And guys, after a while, they start seeing the numbers, and then they start feeling what that means on the floor, and then they just buy in. And that's kind of how we start our practices and talking about what happened the day before. And then we show it on film, bring whether it's in the film room or bringing the iPad down to the court and saying, hey, this is what we're talking about.
Yeah, it's cool to hear. So those 3 things are every day for your players. They'll know those things at the beginning of practice.
Yep. Every day, about 15 minutes before, they all gather up and want to see their scarlet letter if they got, where they stood. And, but then also the offensive stuff, they know. And by 2-3 weeks into it, they know, and also now they're coaching themselves saying, hey, that's a first side shot. We can get this on the second side. Let's do this. Or, hey, we need to get a paint touch. It starts to become their offense.
Yeah, it's great stuff. And no doubt creates a competitive environment. One of the challenges of keeping score, and players obviously knowing that you're keeping score, is they sometimes learn how to cheat the score. They know they have to get a paint touch. They're going to go out of their way to get the paint touch instead of sometimes do the thing that makes sense the most. I'm wondering if you've experienced that and some of the things that you've done to be able to prevent your players from gaming the game, so to speak.
Yeah. So a lot of our games are not predicated on. We might not say, hey, you got to do X, Y, or Z just because of that. Our guys are smart. If we say, hey, we're only scoring at the rim, then everyone just packs the paint. So we just statting after the fact is good, because so now it's okay. You're letting them play, letting them make those decisions, and then they can see the what happened after the fact, and hopefully we just try to empower them to change their decision making the next time around.
So connecting all this then back to transition and then the offense putting pressure, your rim pressure motion. What are some of the emphasis initially in terms of getting into the half court? If we're not scoring in transition, are we flowing into ball screen? We're flowing into cutting game? What's happening?
Yeah. So in transition, we want to get downhill, and really 1 through 4, even one of our 5s, I'd say, is equipped, get off the glass, and we're going. We're not bringing a guard back. We're filling the X's. We want to get to the corners. We want to get high and wide, almost at the coach's hash. And then we're just leaving incredible space where only the 1 and the 5 are crossing half court, off the sideline. And it gives our guys a chance to get guys in back pedals, get them downhill. And then our initial looks are, if we can kick it up, that's what we want, because there's rarely ever going to be a good help side. So we want to kick it up. We also want to go into a trail ball screen at that 1 and 5, or kick it up and the 5 can go set a trail ball screen on the wing, which turns into an open side ball screen. And so we're trying to get all these things quick and make it just defense to make all those decisions in a very, quick manner. We'll also get into X action where we'll cross the highway and pitch back to the guy from the coach's hash and give him a chance to just drive middle of the floor. And then we'll go into a trail ball screen, then into that pitch action and have that big kind of seal up. So those are kind of our main things in transition, but the key is to get to those X's. Our first 3 steps are head down, sprinting, everything about our program's attitude and effort. And that's what transition is. Transition offense and defense is attitude and effort. I think it's way harder to coach fast than to coach slow and control everything. There's so many more possessions. You got to get guys to do things at a high level of energy and effort, thinking fast, making quick reads. And that's just what we just try to emphasize and be about our program. But once we get in the half court, those positions are pretty meaningless. We got a handler, which a lot of times is the point, but usually, we got a handler, we got a big, and then the rest are the same. And now we're just moving around. We're just trying to attack the space and then get into those concepts we talked about, whether it's a trigger from a middle drive, a trigger from a ball screen, and those pair options or the single side option, or we getting into a post up, getting into a flip to post. We have all of our, here's how we play basketball from, scramble, from freelance. And, but there's a pattern to it. There's a motion to it. Guys just kind of know their reads.
So, and we're going to come back. I want to hear more about the spacing template that allows you to be able to play this conceptual, these triggers that go with it. But before that, you said two really cool things that we got to talk about. One is head down on first three steps, which is this concept of when you run initially in transition, you shouldn't look for the ball. You want to get to speed and space first, right?
Exactly. We don't want that kick ahead to be in before half court. Like, we're not going to throw that until it's maybe at the 30-foot mark. Get down the floor, and then we can get you from there to where you're 2 dribbles from the rim. At 28 feet, 30 feet, you're 2 dribbles from the rim if you're on the move. And so we want to put that ball where we can actually do something with it, as opposed to just kicking it up and essentially letting the defense load up. So that's an important tenet for us, is to get to those X's, we call it.
It's great. And then you also have said this twice, rarely a good help side in transition, which is such a key understanding for players. And I'm wondering if that especially applies to trying to attack the weak side with a kick up, hit ahead. There's
no question. We try to do what we don't want to face. Transition D is just so demoralizing. And we really want to play sideline to sideline, as well as, people think north and south, and that's great, but we also want to play sideline to sideline and shift the defense. So if we can get a kick ahead opposite, and all of a sudden that defense is scrambling, that guy's coming out of the hole, and that's a tough closeout. And this guy's got an option to attack either direction, and then you're going to have shooters all with their feet set and hands up on the weak side. You're giving yourself a chance to have a great shot within sometimes 2 seconds of the shot clock going.
And then all of this feeds into what you've talked about already with triggers and stuff. And I want to just go a little bit deeper with that in what you call modern basketball. So for you, what is modern basketball for your team?
Well, pace and space is kind of where everything's going. Probably very NBA centric for what we're doing. And we enjoy that. There's timing based offenses. Hey, said double away here, double across, and wait for this, wait for that, this, that. That's not really who we are. I want to be able to plug and play guys, and give them room to make plays, really get their skill level up so they can play off the bounce, know when to catch and shoot, know when to drive, know the footwork. So that's our major pillar of our offense. So it's up to us to create a pace and space type system where guys can take advantage of that skill set. And then it's just about playing together. But, our motions, we're teaching these post up entries and what happens after that, which we talked about. We talked about the baseline drives. Well, here's what we're doing on baseline drives. Here's what your reads are. Okay. If this guy helps over and you see those numbers, you flip at the post and we just turn the floor. You run shell and you guard, top down. We want to turn the floor as much as we can and then manipulate where help is coming from. We talked about ball screens. If we're going toward the single side, we're going to X behind. We're going to lift. We're going to, set flares or pin downs with those double sides and try to move the tags. We're going to try to move pieces. We don't want those top gaps filled. And that's part of the reasons we really feel we were one of the lower turnover teams, and a lot of that has to do with our spacing and just giving guys the handlers room to make plays. If we're to run a ball screen toward a double side, you're of course you get the lift on the weak side, but we were 45 cutting out of that slot. So there's space, or we're going to flare that guy, or we're going to pin down there. We're going to do something. And then, we talked about that middle drive, that's our trigger box. We put a box basically from the dotted line to those elbows and say, hey, if we get in here, this is our trigger box. This is going to trigger cuts. This is going to duck ins from the bigs. We're going to flow behind. It's some dribble drive concepts to it. And we just try to adopt different things that we liked into one package that made sense for us. And, and it's kind of worked. So guys just kind of know, okay, when stuff breaks down, which most of basketball does, here's how you play basketball, and it'll translate anywhere you go. And that's what we've tried to instill in them.
Third in the country in scoring offense, coach. I think we can say something beyond it kind of worked. I think it worked. That's great. It's a lot of fun to watch. And I encourage people that haven't watched to go watch. And two phrasings, which I liked, which you just shared, is turn the floor and trigger box, which is really cool. I imagine the other part of triggers is obviously having counters. And you referenced that a little bit, but you must be spending a lot of time on teaching your players, how to counter certain defensive coverages.
There's no question. And most of our stuff starts with really quick hitters. We run a lot of sets. We might not have elaborate 3-side sets, that type of thing, but we run a lot of stuff. And a lot of it's just, okay, let's manipulate a defense, get a quick trigger here. And so that once it breaks down or gets to the second side and we're just playing, now all of a sudden it's an open side ball screen instead of a covered ball, so there's just little things that we're going to do. And we're always looking at what a defense is. If we're playing a pack line defense, we're going to get to the edge because they don't want you to get to the edge. If we're going to lift the floor up, if we're going to play, a denial team, that's going to be, middle entries with back doors, and it's just going to be a different entryway into what we ultimately are going to get into. But we're going to have those quick hitters based on what the defense is doing, or if ball screen coverage is going under, we have a whole series of stuff that, hey, we're just going to keep moving these ball screens lower and lower. We're going to get it to weak side. We're going to, we ghosted or slipped. We call, slip action is when we not set the screen, go to the rim. Our ghost action is when we would get to the point of the screen and then pop out to the three. We had 3 illegal screens, and we were a primary ball screen offense last year, and we had 3 illegal screens for the entire year. And because we ghosted and slipped just about everything and just drive behind it or reject. And it's just creates confusion. And then late in the game, when you need to actually set it, it has a different effect. So we just try to be a little non-traditional in how we do things.
So with that, that's fascinating. So with you ghost most screens, is there a call to actually set the screen?
Yeah, there will.
Yeah.
And more so we'll just be, hey, guys just know, okay, we set a lot of guard to guard screens. We were very positionless in that because still people want to maintain their matchups, and switching teams. Our 3-man to 6-7 really shoots it, really plays. Our 1 is, an absolute rocket downhill. Those are 2 different matchups. And most people don't have guys that can guard both of those things, whether it's a 6-foot point guard and a 6'5" wing, both are going to have problems on that switch. And so we're really looking at a matchup based offense. We're really looking for, okay, what can we exploit? And then we just exploit it until they take it away. And that's always going to be what we're about. But yeah, we do have calls for that. And we'll talk about it and say, hey, no, we're in this particular play, we're setting it on this double side ball screen. It's always a reject, even though it doesn't look at it. And then later we'll say, okay, our counter will be, okay, we're coming off this now. Okay, this is the guy that's going to be open. And so the guys have really bought into that.
I think it's tremendous. It's a tremendous way to think the game in the modern game too, is to say, like, ghosting is our norm or rejecting is our norm. And then actually the counter is to use it. And that's tremendous. That's tremendous thinking. And I think coaches will continue to think that way about things that are now flipped from traditional to what modern is.
Yeah, no, it is. It's just flipping the thought process, because what everyone works on is the traditional. Everyone works on the same shell. Everyone works on the same, contrived ball screen coverages. And so for us to do stuff with fast and quick and non-traditional, that's something that's going to be a little different that day for them. And no matter how much, it's not going to be what you worked on for 100 days. And we like that about us.
Well, I love that. You're going to stimulate a lot of thinking with people listening to that. And Coach, a lot of us remember you obviously from Findlay Prepper. That's where we first heard about you. Obviously, tremendous success there. And I'm wondering what the takeaways at this point in your career are from having that experience of working with, again, elite players at that high school or that player development level.
Yeah, Findlay was a player development program masquerading as a champion. I mean, that's really what we were, was just about the gym and the weight room and getting better and the mental part of it. I mean, we spent so many conversations and living with players for 6 years. I mean, that the informal education process of sitting in a living room with 12 players and watching an NBA game. I mean, it's incredible. And learning the psyche of what you say and what they hear are two very different things. And so you have to it made me re-engineer everything, how I talk, how I teach, and have to teach it in a way that I know that it's going to connect. It doesn't matter what we say, it just matters what they're going to know and do. And really do is more than know. So all these things sound great, but you have to have something that they can do. And so that's where we've kind of tried to make things kind of simple and one right answer in a lot of cases, but no wrong answers in some cases. And so those are some of the lessons, but it really applied. The prep school deal back then really applies to what college basketball's become. College basketball's become prep school with the transfer deal. Guys get picked up and left any day of the week. We brought in top 100 guys left and right, deep teams, 12 Division I players, and they always stayed. And because it wasn't like we didn't coach them hard, but I think you have to make it worthwhile. They have to feel if you're feeling personal growth and you're feeling part of a team and a family, it's something that's special, they stay. And I think that's where Division I basketball is with the transfer portal. Players have to feel like they're getting better, they're valued, they're part of something bigger than themselves, and it will stay, they'll stay, and it'll work. It's the prep school level all over again. And so that really prepared for this experience.
That's great. Diving a little bit deeper on a few of those things. One was managing goals, managing expectations, managing egos, however you want to phrase it. That was such a huge part of that. And it's still a part of the huge experience you're going through now. So what are some of the practical things that helped you be able to manage those things?
Yeah, I think just conversation. I mean, they don't care how much you know, and they know how much you care is a big thing. Keeping the main thing, with these guys. And we talk to these guys and know that, like, there's a lot going on, but basketball's the epicenter of most of their existence while they're a hooper. And so we have to talk to them on their terms and say, and I think when the terms are laid out, hey, this is your role, and this is why you're in putting stuff on paper and making it abundantly clear, it takes some of the emotion out. It really helps, guys kind of navigate these waters. And so we try to just take out some of the gray area and simplify their lives. We're kind of 18 to 23 is a tough age. You're in a life transition, and sometimes there's a lot of fog, and part of our job as coaches is to kind of clear that fog and let them kind of see clearly. And that's what we kind of envision our staff as having to do.
With that experience, and obviously all your experiences since then, what's your opinion on some of the things we can do better for grassroots basketball? And, whether we talk about prep, AAU, high school, whatever we talk about.
Yeah. And I'm of the belief that it's better than ever. And we have more participants, more basketball.
That's great to hear, because most people are always knocking it. And I couldn't agree more, Coach.
Yeah. I mean, the doom and gloom is always, you know how it is. As you get a little older,
Generational.
yeah, 15 years ago it was so much better. No, but as you, my opinion, like, okay, now this the new prep school wave. You know, when we created Findlay Prep, we were new and different, and I said these should be in every state, and people were like, "This is crazy." But what's happening, I believe it's developing the higher level talent. When you're going against, when you have 10 high level scholarship players going against each other, that's great. And I love high school basketball. There's a place for that in the whole thing. But I think there's room for both. There's room for both. But I just believe that competition is helping. I think the specialization's hurting. I think you're starting to see some burnout. You're seeing injuries. We love multiple sport guys because you have to adapt. I'm more about the psyche of it. I mean, if you're playing football in the fall with a team of 100 guys, and then you turn around and you have to play basketball in a completely team sport where football is really a niche sport where you just have your position, do your job, you're going to be okay. Basketball, you have to make it work with 5 guys on the floor, and then turn around and run track. You're really, from a mental standpoint, you're always working. Those guys come to college and they always work because that's all they know around the clock on the year is working. And
do you, Coach, with that, do you also feel like those type of, because I always found multi-sport players seem to have a better psychosocial adaptation where they can adapt better to different people and different groups, and because they're just around different people all the time?
1000%. In the basketball grassroots culture, you usually have a hierarchy, a star, someone is getting their name in the paper, and then they come to college and they have to assimilate to a role, to a team, and proceed. It's different. You go from being told and feeling one thing in the social media stardom of high school to maybe redshirting, maybe being a 10-minute a game guy. Whereas the multi-sport athlete who maybe is a, tight end on the football team, who understands that there's roles on teams, maybe becomes a relief pitcher in baseball in the spring, where he understands that dynamic of being part of the team, where basketball doesn't always lend that in the grassroots culture because it's such a star-laden deal with a talent gap. So that's part of the, I 100% agree with you that psychosocial element is easier for the multi-sport player.
Yeah. And you mentioned this, that you mentioned Findlay Prep as a player development program. I'm imagining Southern Utah, you're a player development program. And then you've already connected that. So I just want you to go a little bit deeper on this. Is that one of the things that your players, Findlay and currently, they value is that they feel like they're having a worthwhile experience, this personal growth. And that goes hand in hand with player development, doesn't it?
It does. Player development isn't just getting in the gym and getting someone 500 shots. Okay. It's explaining the why of what you're doing. I watch a lot of workouts and I just shake my head. I'm like, you're working on stuff that'll never happen again.
Me too, Coach. Me too.
So, but I think the conversation piece of saying, hey, man, like your shots are going to come from catch and shoot. I mean, this is great. The, crossover, behind the back, step back is great, but you're never going to actually use this outside of pickup. And so those conversations and understanding where these skills apply to the game, I think that was something that we really wanted to re-engineer in our offense, is say, hey, this is what we're working on baseline drive, flip to post today, and this is where it fits in our offense. I think that's the element when guys come back from summers and they've had a great summer of training, and it's like you worked on something that probably isn't ever going to be in your roll sheet. And so we try to combine the two. Hey, this is what we're working on when it's just you, but this is where it's going to fit in basketball, and here's where it's going to fit beyond Southern Utah in the world of basketball. If you learn to be really good off of a 45 cut weak side, on a strong side post, and you're able to finish off that pass, and that's you're going to use that 10 years from now. That's going to still apply. And I think just having that skill development is so much more than just the actual action itself. It's the conversation, it's the bigger picture.
Well, I love this conversation because, again, I think we're both supportive of players going and learning any crazy thing they want on their own. Even if they're doing it with their trainer to a certain extent, they got to have fun and they got to try and reach beyond their level and build their confidence through their skill, for sure. But it's your job, is what I'm understanding as a coach, is to focus that and connect those skills and decisions to actual game situations. And I love that, because that's really what our job is as a coach, to take those players and connect them.
There's no question. I said, my job as a coach, we come to practice, and my job is to prescribe exercises. If you just strip it down, I come there and I prescribe these guys exercises that we think are going to apply to winning. And we do a drill and they do it well. We just move on and say, okay, that was supposed to take 10 minutes. You mastered it in 2. We move on. Like I just tell the guys all the time, I'm just here to prescribe the exercises to get to where we want to go. If you master them, we can move on. We probably play more than anybody in the country. We play a lot. And because the game is 5-on-5. The game is reads, there's weak side, there's spacing. So as we've done this, we've evolved less of a drill team, more of a competitive team. The other day we did a drill, and just kind of broke some things down, and there was no competition, no score. And it felt so bizarre to me. I couldn't even remember the last time we weren't competing in some sort of drill. We always have a score, but it was just a teaching time. But it made me realize just how much we compete in everything we do, because that's paramount. That's paramount. That's going to create, lions and lambs on your roster.
So you talked about this personal growth. I'm curious then, with that, how do you help players understand they're improving, even if they're not playing as much as they want to? And that obviously applies to your Finley situation and to your college situation.
Yeah, we put stuff on paper and we just say, hey, this is who you are. This is who you are as a teammate. This is who you are off the floor. You're an energy giver, or hey, you're an introvert, but this is where you can use that to your advantage. Or hey, this is, you're an influencer. Here's what we can do. But not only those things, but then on the floor as well. Here's where you're struggling. If we get you to your left hand, the data set shows you're going to pick it up. Or hey, every time you go left, you're going to give it up. If we get you going to the right, you ain't giving it up. We try to really use all the tools at our disposal, whether it be synergy or KenPom or hoop mat, whatever may be the case. We try to just use our tools to show them, because there's no emotions in numbers. They're facts. And some guys everyone thinks they're nice at the mid-range jumper. And then we'd say, okay, I literally had a player, I said, you're a 22% guy. And by the end of 3 months, we green light it. If you can shoot 45% from there, we'll allow you to shoot it. And after 3 months, he was a 22% guy. You couldn't believe it. It's just, so we try to use numbers to teach, because it's not emotional. And so that part of it is a big deal. But putting it on paper, I just think, I had a player come in last January and said, he wasn't playing, but we just said, anytime you feel like you're not getting better, you're plateauing, we got to talk about it. Let's talk about it. And he said, I just don't know if I'm getting better. I was getting so much better for 4 months. I feel like I'm the same player right now. And so, well, what do we got to do to change that? What is it? What are you doing in your and then we kind of put a plan together, and now he's going to have a big impact this year, it's just having guys take ownership in it. They're doing it for them. They're not doing it for me. That's a huge step in player development.
Another part I'd love to hear your thoughts on are this notion of connecting players, obviously with diverse talent, to this common purpose. Because I'm imagining you got lots of repetitions of that through your development as well, with these different teams you with, all the way from Finley to UNLV, obviously now to being a head coach. Can you talk a little bit about how you connect players to a common purpose?
Yeah, we talk about it. I mean, there's nothing that goes untalked about. And we talk about individual goals within that framework. Every year we do this exercise. I'm sure everybody does, but how many minutes do you want? and we have the form. How many shots do you want? Then we sit back and say, okay, well, there's 200 minutes a game, and you guys want 600 minutes, and we're going to get X amount of possessions a game, but if everyone averages what you want, we're going to score 380 points a game. Like, here's how do we cut this thing? How do we make it work? And sometimes we'll even give it back to them and say, okay, knowing that there's 200 minutes in a game, knowing that there's X amount of shots, now tell me how many you're going to get. And then you come back, we work it down to where you create a realistic expectation. And then just try to explain, like, this is how this works. There's guys that score more, create more offense, get more opportunities. This isn't communism basketball. It's not. This is those that are better get the shots. And Joe, to be really, really clear with that, we really talk about it. We really open it up and talk about it.
And players are generally accepting of honesty. That's what we're finding.
There's no question. Our better players I'm harder on than the rest of the roster. And I think that has always resonated with the rest of the group, that they're going to be held to a higher standard. And the other guys be like, oh man, this guy's an all-league guy, and he's getting the business every day about shot selection and making the right play. And I think just so much of it is you can't let one breakdown occur. A bad shot, we always just tell guys, and they know, is you're telling the rest of your team that you don't trust them. If you shoot a bad shot, it's telling 4 other guys you do not trust them enough to pass it to them. And when they think about it in those terms, a lot of times guys are wanting to be a part of the team. They want to do the right thing. So that's been helpful for us.
That's great. And another thing that I know you got a lot of repetitions with is this notion of caring for the mental health of your players. You talked about that Finley situation of these 12 players being there in this house, and tons of repetitions to be able to understand and explain this. So help us understand a little bit better this piece of mental health, Coach.
Yeah, we've really, this is still a game. This is still supposed to be fun. Okay, this is something they started playing at some point in their life because it was fun. And in basketball, so we want the emotion. We like the individualism because, within the team framework, but we want this to be fun for them. So that's a big deal, because I think when the enthusiasm's there, a lot of the other stuff takes care of itself. But we're also, these guys go through a lot. This is a whole different deal. I mean, we've been going through COVID, and the world is just, there's different pressures on the 18 to 23-year-old world than was when I was that age. And we're if a guy doesn't want to go, a guy needs a day. If I can't get done and get in place in 100 practices that we get between workouts and everything, and guy needs a day, then that's on me. That's on me. And the team knows that. Hey, that everyone's going to go through some stuff at some point in time. And we just want our guys. I'd rather have a guy at 90% feeling good and in a good space, give me a great practice, than 4 straight days of 30%, knowing that his head's in the clouds because of something going on. And so we try to just be really cognizant of those things and give them a support structure. But we talk a lot, do life skills classes and stuff like that, and try to help organize their thoughts.
Yeah, and that's got to be, again, connecting back to what you said about dealing with the modern player, is that, obviously we want them to be healthy on and off the court, but that also helps you with what your goal is retaining the player in your program, doesn't it? When you show you're caring like that. Yeah,
I think but it's why we do it. Like I talk to our staff, we're not doing this because, oh boy, if we show we like them, they're going to stay. No, like we have to want to be a part of their lives. We have to want to be interested in them. And if you're not, this isn't the level to coach basketball at. There's other places where that relation doesn't mean the same. You know what I mean? But here at this level and the way we do it, it's just a relationship-based program. They're going to play their tails off for us. We haven't had a bad practice, I would say, in 2-3 years now, where it's like, oh boy, we got to get these guys going today. And I think it's a lot to do because they don't mind going to practice. we enjoy each other's company, but we're going to laugh. Like our practices aren't, it's open practices. I tell our staff all the time, we'd put our practices on the internet if we had any resources. Let everybody watch it, because it's not about what we do, it's about how we do it. And we're always going to do it with enthusiasm, and it's going to look a certain way.
I'm sure they enjoy it too, because you're playing a lot in practice, coach. Like that's not lost on me. Obviously, I value that. But what I want to get your thoughts on then are, how are you coaching within 5-on-5? Because that seems to be what some coaches struggle with, is understanding how to coach 5-on-5.
Yeah, no, and you got to stop it. You got to have your non-negotiables, and the guys know what our non-negotiables are. Whether it be defensively or whatever. And as soon as one of those toes are in that water, it's got to stop. You got to, because if you're not stopping it, you're promoting it. And so there's certain non-negotiables that you just got to stop the 5-on-5 and say, hey, we don't give up a middle drive. This ain't going to happen. And you subbing in practice has the same effect as subbing in a game. And guys just know, hey, I don't get to play now. You took my ball away because I broke one of our covenants. And so that's the thing. You got to have your non-negotiables of what you're willing to do. And we do it in different ways. We compete 5-on-5, but maybe it's 3 trips with a 10-second trip in the middle trip, or maybe we're doing innings or scoring on defense, or there's a million different games to play to get the emphasis you want. And then what we'll do is we'll play the 5-on-5, but hey, we have a lot of things in our offense because we want to work on defending them in practice. So we might run a middle ball screen set, go in our package of middle ball screen stuff because we need to work on middle ball screen coverages. Or we might, run on our small and big, cross screen stuff that day. And because we're working on bumping that and guarding that. But we have all those things in everything that we want are going to face, we want to at least have in our offense at some point. And then we just play guarding it.
Yeah, it's pretty simple when you break it down that way, coach. And, you talked about, like, if you're not stopping it, you're promoting it. Great. So you stop, say, for a middle drive. Give us a little bit more impression. So you're not always subbing the player necessarily, but that's one of the options. What are some of the options when you stop it for middle drive, say?
They just have to know, because there's nothing more like stopping 5-on-5 drives guys nuts. And early in the season, where all of a sudden you're going every possession and it's getting stopped, guys don't want to play that way. That gets old, and that's part of that's part of the effect. And but we're stopping. I mean, if you transition defense is paramount. Getting back on the disruptive ball pressure. We don't have that, then we're stopping it. If we need multiple efforts, if a guy doesn't give a multiple effort, that's a quick way to not be able to participate anymore. Giving up, we defend the 3 middle drives. We contest everything 2 hands. We're a 2-hand contest team. We want to be second off the floor, and we 2-hand rebound. And that's kind of our core things. Like, I just know if one of those things happens, and the guys know, the play is going to stop and it's going to be addressed. And the same thing on offense is different things, but that's how we do it. That's how we do it. And you just can't have any slippage.
Well, and I want to say, like, you say it drives them nuts, but the alternative drives them more nuts, which is not playing basketball, right? Where you're just doing drills and drills and drills, or running and running and running. So I found that players, even though it drove some of the newcomers nuts or the freshmen nuts initially, they bought in because they said, oh, we get to play basketball and you're going to coach us while we're playing basketball.
That's exactly what happens. Every day, you get the practice plan, guys look at it. It's like, hey, like yesterday, our closeouts were horrendous. So we're doing a closeout. We're going to have to do this. You're going to have to do this, this, and this in order to do it within playing, and so guys start policing themselves and say, hey, man, we could be getting up and down and getting better instead of doing stations. So
that's so powerful. I'm glad you made that connection. And the other part is, it's more important to coach what you want to coach, your non-negotiables, in the 5-on-5 than in the drill. And I find a lot of coaches that coach the crap out of the drill, let the player do whatever they want when they finally get to 5-on-5. And you're basically skipping that part of that. Yeah.
And the other part is, we got guys that are just absolute drill all-stars. Absolute drill all-stars. And you just put them in 5-on-5 setting, and all, because the game isn't the physical part. The game is quick thinking. That's really what's happening. You're processing and processing over and over and over. This is it's a quick chess match, the way we're trying to do it. We're trying to play a lightning fast chess match. And so we want our guys to be able to think faster than our opponent.
No, it's so true. And, you can memorize a lot of drills, and that's where your drill all-stars come from, because they can memorize it. And as you said, the game is quick thinking. It's much harder to memorize and be successful at 5-on-5.
There's no question. It's a different tenacity. I mean, guys master drills and they look great, and then and in the game they miss a shot and their head's down and they're not doing the same thing you just worked on. So it's a different tenacity. You're overcoming emotions when you're playing 5-on-5. There's no real emotions in drills. You just achieve. You know what you got to achieve. You do it, and there's not really a randomness to it. Something's not just going to happen. You're not going to get a bad call or something out of the ordinary happen, which is what happens on just about every possession.
Well, you brought that back full circle, Coach. That's very professional of you, because you talked about randomness at the beginning of this whole podcast, that you wanted your offense to be random. There's no way you can build that without having random practice, right? Because otherwise your players are going to be too scripted. So I'm really glad you made that connection.
I just believe the way we do it and the amount we play is putting experience on these tires. So and I think it's helped develop our players. We've taken pride in our guys getting better. 4 of the 6 guys that we had, our transfers come here and they get better. But 4 of the 6 guys that, we went 20-4 with last year were homegrown guys, and they get better. And I think it's just because of the reps. You're seeing these scenarios in practice, and I'm telling our freshmen right now, hey, you guard Tevye and Jones every day. Who's going to be potentially player of the year of our league. You're getting better, and his confidence is growing by the minute, as he's starting to see some success. So I think that's how you can grow that confidence too, as opposed to just doing drills.
Coach, I mean, all we got to say is you started with only 6 wins, and now you're at the point where, you've won the conference. You've got a great roster back. Just a tremendous job there at Southern Utah.
I appreciate it. We're excited. We were 20-4 last year, and we brought everybody back. We had 4 guys on the various all-league teams, and they all chose to come back. And we've added some good pieces, so that we're really excited for the season. And we thought we left a lot. We're talking about scoring here today, and we're 3rd in the nation in scoring. And I thought we left a lot of meat on the bone. Our first conversations were about how many points we left, not how many we scored. So we're hoping that this year will be an extension of that.
Well, must viewing for all of us, Coach, based on that, because if you're already 3rd in the country in scoring, we know there's more in the bone. That's going to be fun to watch.
I appreciate that.
Thanks for joining us, Coach.
Thank you so much.